So this is the VS Code AI agent supported project coding. Here's the folder setup. We're going to do R and Stata with Excalidraw. References is going to be especially important. We're going to bring in material and we're going to provide instructions to the AI agent. And we're going to have a folder for Stata code if necessary. This document I'm showing you has quick start cheat sheet reminders, including how to set up the folders, how to set up your drivers, your control files, and everything is defined, and we'll go over everything in detail. How to provide references to your agent, and how to interact with your agent. So we're going to do a project as an example. To do this project, we're going to decide where you want to put the workflow, create a folder, deciding if you're going to do Stata or R, create subfolders, collect and process reference materials, and draft out the analysis plan. The example I'm going to work through is HCAP project. It's building off another project that uses Stata, so we're going to use Stata. We're going to create the folders, we're going to bring in the reference material, and then we're going to draft out an analysis plan and get chugging away on doing data analysis. This is my current plan for the statistical analysis plan for this project. And as you'll see, we get most of the way through it. So, first thing to do is to get to the place where you want to set up the working directory for this project. That's Bruno. We're gonna make a new folder for this project, call it Briseño 202602. And we'll get into that folder, and from there we'll be able to set up the folders. Here's a quick little shell command you can use to build all the folders and some of the files to get started. Here's the tree diagram for what we just created. We've got bibliography started, Excalidraw drawing started, and instructions document started. These are all empty right now. And we're going to start by hand here a control file that's a do markdown file, and a driver file, which is simply a do file. Now, taking you over to the references folder. The references folder is currently empty except for a blank instructions document. I just proved to you it's blank. And a subfolder called LLM out. And we'll get materials in there. We're going to use PDF to LLM. It's a little shell command that extracts text and page information from PDF documents, makes it available to your AI agent. You can get to it on my GitHub. And the GitHub has a nice README, including instructions for Windows users. If you want to use it in a Windows environment, it's quite possible. While you were away, I added a lot of materials to the references folder, a couple of papers, and some code. I've got a lot of do files here. Like I said, I'm building off a previous project, so I just copied over all that code into this folder, and the AI agent will be able to refer to it because I'm going to tell it that it can. I'm going to use this command, PDF to LLM. Mine is in my path, so I can just run it with a single command and extract the text and page information out of that PDF and make it available to my agent once we get started. And now I'm going to do it again for some of the other PDFs in this folder. So we've got 4 PDFs that I provided for background material. And if we look at what's in the LLM out folder, you will see that we have 4 sets of extracted data from those references. So that's good to go. Now I'm ready to start VS Code, and I have a driver and a do file. I got some boilerplate code I can add to the driver file. The driver file is what you use to create the end product, and I'm working towards generating a Word document that summarizes the analyses to give to my customers. Makes it easier to share if it's in Word, makes it easier to transition to a document if everything's generated in Word. And I'm just customizing this boilerplate text for the current project. And you can see we're referencing control.doMD, which we'll define next. I use an absolute path in that driver folder. That's a limitation of working with Stata. I got to include that. At one place I have to include that absolute path. And now I'm in the control file. I pasted in some example text. This is a YAML header because we're going to make a markdown document. We're going to process it into a Word document. So bear with me as I type in the important details for this analysis. Excuse me. So I've got the YAML all set up. Now I'm going to move on to the Stata code. I like to run my code with echo off, and I'm going to set that up and put in some placeholders for standard procedures, setting the environment and settings, and then I'm going to define some variables, get some data, and do some analyses. I'm just going to throw some file names in here. And I'm going to use the terminal to just open up blank copies of those do files. That touch command lets you create an empty file. But before I make this file, I'm going to spell algorithm correctly. I know that was bothering you. There you go. So now I've got all my references, and I want to get to that instructions file, which is blank. I've got a set of instructions in the helper Obsidian document. It's also going to be on the GitHub I will share. And then I'm going to go over to the AI agent over on the right, and I'm telling it to read and follow the instructions in instructions.md. And that's going to tell the agent what to do, how to use the references, and how to help me writing code. The exact content of those instructions we're not going to cover, and you can look through them at your leisure, or maybe we'll go over it in the live session. Right now it's building now it's making some changes to the code I've already written based on what's in the instructions. And here we're getting to the issue of I have a absolute path in my driver document, and the instructions say no absolute paths. So I'm going to have to tell the agent that I'm going to tell it now. Please allow me to use an absolute path in the driver file. After this, I went back and made a change to the instructions. And now it's keep telling me he wants to change my original code. Turns out I'm being inconsistent with my file naming convention, my boilerplate text, and what I actually created. And so I'm accepting those changes. Now I'm asking it to update the blank and empty bibliography.bib and make its own BibTeX reference file for the material that's in the references folder. And it will do that just by reading the PDFs. Now we've skipped ahead a little bit. I've asked the AI agent to draft an introduction for me based on the analysis plan and based on the background material. And a lot of the orientation for the particular analysis and why we're doing it is summarized in that Briseno draft document. We're adding an analysis to it, so we're telling the agent to read that and figure out why we're interested in orientation in particular as an item that may have differential item functioning or measurement non-invariance by Hispanic status. And it's just going to read it, come up with some text. It's obviously, as with everything done with an AI, it needs to be edited. It's just first draft placeholder text, but at least it's tied to real results, real documentation, and my real analyses. Okay, so let's take a step back and review where we are. We have a BibTeX bibliography. We have a control file and a driver file. We've got our instructions. Also added a page break markdown file for inserting page breaks. I've got a reference doc for the format I like my word output. We've got our LLM output for the AI agent. And we've got a few Stata codes. They're all blank at this point. This is the driver file. We've made a note about including the absolute path. And I have to include an absolute path to that pandoc file for some reason. The document generates if I run the pandoc. So with this first draft introduction file and some of the blank do's and the references, we have a background of a working system here. We can start adding in some details. I've done a lot of work off camera, and I'm going to walk you through what our first draft of this analysis report looks like and how I got there. We have our Word document. It's open right now. We got our BibTeX library, control, and driver files. We've got some logs created by our AI agent as we're doing some checking. We've got a figure, we've got lots of slides. I'll show you the slideshow. Generated some markdown files through coding to summarize results. And we've got some other data checking. This is the references folder. This is example code from another project, some PDFs to describe the background material. That's a command to use to generate the slides I'm going to show you, some other logs for checking things that the agent developed. These are the Stata codes that we've developed to execute the project. There are some do files and doMD files. The do files are meant to be run unseen, not produce any results. When we do want to produce results, we pair those do files with doMD files that streamline the reporting of information to share with the reader. We've got some saved DTA files and a M+ output file. So let me show you what that driver looks like now. There we go. So I had to add some other additional instructions about using MarkStat with nested include statements. If you're a Stata user, this is my custom version of MarkStat. I've added some modifications to allow includes like Quarto does, and it requires some little special care. We have a Word document that's loaded with text and responses. I'll go through it quickly. It's about 4 or 5 pages long. The abstract is unchanged since we developed it previously. It's really just placeholder text at this point. We'd like to put something meaningful in there that summarizes the analyses. This background material is unchanged from before. But we've got additional detail that documents some of the code that we've done, but not results. This is all just AI agent generated descriptions of the procedures. So the agent knows what the code asks of the data, but it does not know the results of the data. So you will have to add an interpretation of the results on our own, but it can describe what the procedures are. And when you compile the document, the results get interspersed with the text. Here's our summary table from our diff analysis. The formatting could use some work. Here's our figure, item characteristic curves showing diff. And here's some appendix material, describes how data were put together, how we merged, what variables were used. And again, the text that you're seeing here has all been generated by either ChatGPT or Claude. It does not know the results because the results are generated locally and the document is woven together when we compile from Markdown. So the data stays on your computer and the AI agent doesn't actually know what the data is, but it knows how you asked. And then here's the one Excalidraw drawing I wanted to include. I needed to do some math checks, so I thought I may as well do it in Excalidraw. So let's see. What are we going to look at next? Probably the control file. So here's the control file. We've got our YAML header, unchanged from previously. We've got our Stata code chunk, which runs through the code, meant to be run unseen, does not itself produce results. If we want to get results, we get them out of generated markdown files or the doMD do markdown files that also may be AI generated. But the results that come out of there are woven in. Now, most of the code I'm going to show you was generated with the help of a coding agent. I started with ChatGPT. I stuck with ChatGPT through most of it, switched to Claude at some points later. Here are some prompts I used. I'm saying, please read the documentation from HRS documentation, blah, 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 and describe the contents of the different variable sets. I generated that data set, so I know what to ask of it, just to remind me what's what. I found some labels for race and Hispanic in the documentation for the data sets, pasted it into the code, and I asked Chat to automatically I asked it to take that information and make properly formatted stata commands to apply value and variable labels for this variable. This 4-category race variable is generated, and Chat read the information, copied out of the code book, and generated this nice label statement. It's just an example of time-saving thing you can do. You know, I've looked for that race variables. I've recoded that and made new variable label statements hundreds of times for this data set. And now I can just say, do it, and it will be done. Here's some additional slides of prompts and what kind of feedback you get from the prompt. That was an execution of a stata code, but it executes locally again. Here I'm asking it to create this race variable. I'm including a checkvar report. I always like to include checkvars so we can trace back and make sure things are coded properly. Turns out it wasn't coded properly, so then I asked it to fix it. I added to read a document in the references folder, this algorithm that applies an algorithm. I asked it to read it and then turn it into a function that I can use in this program. And so it generated it, put it in a do file, and now I'm asking it to generate a doMD for that do file to describe what the function does and to prove that it produces the same result as the original algorithm, because the result of the original algorithm was in the data set. So we took old code, turned it into a function, and checked it against the results of the old code, and actually found a little bit of weirdness, and that's now been documented. Now we're going through the substantive analyses, looking at different patterns of impairment show up by race group, and how the orientation variable fits in. Now I asked it to code up a modified nonlinear factor analysis, Manilfa diff analysis. I gave it an example of some code that does Manilfa for diff analysis using the variables we already set up, and it does it. It did it fantastically. The only problem is it gave me 3 dummies for 3 races. Here's pasted in a CSV. I knew I wanted to tabulate the results, so I worked out how I wanted the table to work in a little spreadsheet. Then I downloaded the spreadsheet as a CSV and I pasted it in, and I said, make this a table, and here's where to go get the information for each cell. It's not even any kind of formal syntax. It was just kind of words in some kind of systematic fashion. It was able to figure out what I wanted and populate the table that we scrolled by. Now I'm cleaning up the code. I'm asking it to change the echo settings. I'm still having a hard time getting a figure to show up, so we're troubleshooting that. And then I caught it inserting fake references. It was using BibTeX type references for things that weren't in the bibliography, and I scolded it, and it said sorry, asking for an extract from the out, and I just told it to go read the log file from model results to quality of numerical results and paste it into the generated output, and it did it without a hitch. It was so beautiful. That's pretty much it. Thanks for watching.